Welcome everybody to Super Worship Sunday. We're so glad that you've joined us today. Hey, I am Timothy Palmer, and this is
Emily Palmer.
Emily Palmer. We're so happy that you're here with us today. So, Emily, I'm amazed. Every Super Worship Sunday I'm amazed, but this one I'm even more amazed because the city really came out yesterday. They planned a parade for Super Worship Sunday. They had all kind of food and jambalaya, all for Super Worship Sunday. It's really great how not only have they added a cool football game for Super Worship Sunday, but they've also added all this other stuff as well. What did you think about all that?
I thought it was amazing and wonderful and full of lots of fun things to grab.
Lots of fun things to grab. Yes, we had a great time, and hopefully you did too. And now it's time for the main attraction, Super Worship Sunday. So Emily, how do you feel like worship is going to go today?
Well, you never know, Tim, what's going to happen, ever.
You really don't.
No.
I've heard rumors that the pastor who's doing Super Worship today might dress up in a fawn and dance on stage. What do you think about those rumors?
I think they need to stay rumors.
Probably need to stay rumors. Are you listening, Pastor Tim? Are you listening? No bathroom humor today in the message. Please, Pastor Tim. Okay, well, we'll be back with you at halftime to see how Super Worship is going. Welcome to Super Worship Sunday. Some of y'all didn't know you were coming to that this morning, so welcome to that. That's good. I grew up in Franklin First United Methodist Church. Huge church in Franklin, Tennessee, and they did worship every single week the exact same way. And it was cool. It was cool. I'm not even really knocking it. But as a kid, it was interesting because this is what I did as a kid. I would take the bulletin, and I know some of you have done this before. You may not want to admit it, right? But you've done this. And I would sit there with a pencil next to my parents, and I would go through the bulletin, and I would put a little check mark next to everything that we had done because we were getting closer and closer to being able to go home and get out of this boring place. Because it was boring. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest in worship in front of God. It was really, really boring. And so I left the church, after I didn't have to go anymore. And I didn't step foot in a church during my 20s at all. Didn't. But God called me back, called me into the ministry, actually decided and knew in my heart that God was calling me to be a pastor before I even started going to church. Like I had the calling to be a pastor having not gone to church in like 10 years. And so that's interesting. And so I came back to the church that I grew up in and I started looking through all this and I said, this is good. This is good stuff. I'm starting to understand it. I understand why we do this. I understand why we do that. But I need to experience some different things, because I'm going to be a pastor and I have to understand how different people worship. And so I went to some different churches and I went and visited a Church of Christ and they didn't use any instruments. And that's cool. That's nice. That's awesome. I went to a Pentecostal church. Ooh, self-expression. Yeah, tambourines going, the complete opposite of that. And, I got the feeling that the worship service was not considered a success unless somebody passed out. I mean, that was like, it wasn't conversions or anything. It was like, did someone pass out? I went to a high church. You ever been to one of those? Like where everybody's wearing a costume, like I would be up here with my hat, it's fancy, robes, everything. And that's cool. I'm not knocking any of this stuff. It's just different. Been to a modern church where they blow smoke at you in the middle of worship. Anybody ever been to one of those? That was intense. It's like, whew, I don't know what that is in the air, but I feel better. Okay. Yeah, I've been to all these. I went to a Jehovah's Witness church once. I've been to one of those. I like the fact they were so honest, though, when you came in for the first worship song. They were like this. Somebody was playing the guitar, and they're like, someone's knocking at your door. Somebody's ringing your bell. You know, I was like, man, that's very honest of you. You guys really throw it out there, you know. And I went to that Church of Christ church, and I loved how the guitar player at the Church of Christ, they just played the air guitar, you know, because that was cool. But my favorite church that I ever went to was this church. And, you know, growing up at the Methodist church, we did church really quick. Y'all would love it, you know, because we were out in like 45 minutes, you know. Like, it was all about how quick can we get to IHOP, okay? The main attraction of Sunday morning was not worship, it was IHOP. And so I was used to that. I'm like, all right, we go to the 9 o'clock service, and by 9:45, we were sitting in IHOP having some pancakes and some bacon and some eggs. Love that stuff. And so I go to this one church, and we're 45 minutes into the service, and the guy hasn't even preached. I'm like, man, no sermon? No boring sermon this morning? This is great. I'm going to go to IHOP and not even have to listen to it. But at that point, the guy got up to preach. I was like, oh boy, okay, well, this must be a quick one. That's good. About 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, I am not at IHOP. And I realized what's taken so long is the people in the congregation would talk back to the preacher, you know? And like, so he would be preaching and, you know, wiping his sweat, and he'd be like, ah. And then the lady over here would stand up and go, you preach on it. And like, go this. I'm like, whoa. And I'm looking around. I'm looking for the bouncers because I didn't know you were allowed to do that. Did you know you're allowed to do that? Yeah. So a couple other people did that. And so all of a sudden, and this is a long time ago, so understand this, I would never ever do this in today's world. But I said, okay, I'm trying to experience a new worship style. And so I stood up just like they were doing, and I went, hooty-hoo! And it was embarrassing because they all looked at me, and I was like, okay, a hooty-hoo for Jesus. It is 11:45 now, and I am ready to go to IHOP. And it's been 2 hours. And at that point, someone came up to sing, and she wasn't even singing about Jesus. She was singing Alicia Keys. And I was like, that doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. And then a step team came up. It was like the First Baptist Steppers. And I'm like, come on, it is 1:15 and I am hungry for IHOP. Can we please go to IHOP? And then finally a poet came up, and I was like, look guys, this is a talent show. This is not church. This is a talent show. And so there was a lot to take in, but the point is that everybody worships a little bit different, and you know, it's not up for us to knock how other people, other churches, other denominations worship. We all worship in our own way. Which finally, that's a big introduction to this really amazing scripture. This is something else. This is one of my favorites in the David story. So let's get into it. Verse 1, 2 Samuel chapter 6. David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. Now, I'm going to pause right there because 30,000 of the best troops in Israel. Now, what do you think is about to happen if 30,000 troops are gathering to enter Jerusalem? I mean, what kind of big battle, big coup, you know, like somebody's taken over? What is going on? No. Verse 2. And David arose and went with all of the people who were with him from Baal Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who sits enthroned on the cherubim. So they're bringing the ark of the covenant into the holy city of Jerusalem. This is a major event. This is God's presence on earth. It's hard for us to get that because we live in the age where Jesus is everywhere, right? Jesus, the Holy Spirit is everywhere. Jesus is with us in this worship service. But back then, that ark represented God's presence. That was God's presence on earth. And so God is entering the city of Jerusalem. This is one of the biggest events in the Bible, and it gets almost no airtime. I don't know how many of y'all have heard a lot of sermons on this, but it almost gets no airtime. And you're going to see why a lot of pastors don't like to give this airtime in a couple of verses. But this is a huge event. Next verse. And they carried the ark of God on a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were driving the new cart with the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. Now that's a worship service right there, isn't it? Now one thing, and this isn't to knock anybody's style of worship. This is not what this is. I'm saying this for. But that right there, what does that sound like? I didn't hear anything. It sounds like, look, we got some stringed instruments, right? We have some stringed instruments here. We have all kind of percussion represented here. I mean, this is one heck of a praise band. It's interesting. What they used for this amazing worship experience is what we now call contemporary worship. I pointed this out to a church a few years ago, and they looked at me a little crazy, but you guys are so much more intelligent than them, I think you're going to get it. They were in Oklahoma. What we call traditional music, part of worship, is actually contemporary. And what we call contemporary is actually traditional. You've never thought of it like that, have you? In the big scheme of history of worship, of the history of worship, if you go to seminary and you take a class on the history of worship, and the big scheme of it, the organ, the choir, those things are new in the big scheme of things. They came apart just a couple centuries ago. What we call contemporary worship has been around, as you can see, a very, very long time. They would take anything they could find. Let's just make a joyful noise to God. Let's worship. Bang something, strum something, play something, do something, use your voices, and let's worship God. Okay, that was a long thing about nothing. Next verse. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nakon, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him down there because of his error, and he died there beside the ark of God. Now you can see why you probably haven't heard this in a lot of Methodist churches or any other denomination where we try to, not get a little crazy in worship, right? Because this is a tough. Don't raise your hands. But how many of you would have said that Uzzah did the right thing? I mean, picture this. The ark of the Lord, God's presence on earth, is entering Jerusalem. They've picked the best people to carry it, This is like the funeral of an amazing person who touched thousands of lives. And you think of what an honor it would be to be a pallbearer bringing the casket, right? This is the best of the best who have been chosen out of the army to carry the Ark of the Covenant. And by no fault of this person, the oxen stumbles, the cart falls, and this person tries to keep it from falling and touches. God gets angry and he dies. Does that sit well with you? We have forgotten that we need a mediator between us and God. We are not fit to be in the presence of God without Jesus. When you look at this scripture verse, it's not so much that God killed him. It's more that you cannot come into the presence of God even a little bit dirty and live. It's kind of like what I was saying a couple weeks ago with the tsunami, with the milk. You know, the one drop of the virus in the milk contaminates the whole thing. This is a perfect, holy God. You can't, it's not even like it's a choice of God. It's just you cannot be in the presence of this God and live. Uzzah touched the ark and Uzzah died. And it bothers us. And we're not alone, because it bothered David. David got so angry with God, he basically broke up with God. I think that's the best way to put this. And David was angry because the Lord had broken out against Uzzah, and that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day. And he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" So David was not willing to take the ark of the Lord into the city of David. But David took the it aside to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. David breaks up with God. This worship service, this amazing 30,000 men, all of Jerusalem, everybody's so excited, everybody worshiping God, comes to an absolute halt. David says, "Stop, take that thing out of here. I'm angry, I'm done. How can we have that here if we can't stand before this thing? How can we have this God among us if we are not fit to be with this God? If we can't touch this, if we can't be close to this, if we're not worthy of this?" And so David puts the ark somewhere else and walks away from God. You ever been there? How many of us have broken up with God? I have. I'm sure many of us have. We've had those years, we've had those months. Something happened to us. God didn't protect the person that we wanted God to protect. God didn't do what we thought God should have done in a certain moment, right? And so we walk away and we go down a different path. Let's see what happens from here. "And the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all of his household. And it was told to King David, 'The Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God.' So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing." And so here's the thing. We may break up with God, but God doesn't break up with us. I don't care at what point in your life you said no to God. You said, "I'm done with this. You didn't do what I thought you should do. I'm angry. You let this person die. You did this," or whatever. The thing is, God hears you breaking up with him, and what does God do? Keeps on walking right beside you. You can break up with him. He doesn't break up with you. He says, "I hear your anger. I'm big enough to take it. I feel you. I understand why you're upset. Let's keep walking." And he keeps on walking until we come back. And so David gets so excited over this that he plans another big celebration. "And when those who bore the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, He sacrificed an ox and a fattened animal, and David danced before the Lord with all his might. And David was wearing a linen ephod. Now, did you know that you can buy an ephod at Target? You can. It's right next to the boxers, the briefs, the ephod. And so I have one on, and if you give me just a second, no, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Would never do that. Like, here's the thing. We've got that thing so twisted. I was reading some commentaries this week about this, and even I've had it a little twisted. And there's some disagreements, but basically, we picture this as David like dancing in his like little cloth, you know. That's not what this was. An ephod is basically worship clothes. Okay, the priest would wear an ephod, and then they would have like a breastplate, but this didn't have the breastplate on it. So it's basically, thank you, son. This is King David. I didn't even go into that part, but yeah, we skipped some stuff. David is now king, right? This is King David. Imagine the king. He's got his crown, he's got his robe, he's wearing the most expensive clothes almost all the time, right? The way that the commentators say that we should look at this is it's not that David was just exposing himself and being inappropriate. It's more that David was telling all of Jerusalem, there is only one king in this parade, and I'm not him. That was the message of the ephod. David was saying, this isn't about me. This worship service is not about me. This parade that we're having is not about me. It's not about what I'm wearing. It's not about what I'm doing. It's all about God. And I am so excited that God has provided a way for us to do this and not get killed, to be in His presence and not get killed, that I am going to dance with all my might, just like the common people. That's the message. Just like the common people. That's what the ephod was about. I'm not going to stand over here like the royals always do and just poke their nose up and look down at the way that the common people are worshiping. David says, I am a common person when compared to God. I'm just like everybody else. And so I will be with the servants, with the slave girls, with everybody else, and I will dance before God. I will be like this. That's what it was like. Can you imagine? Why was David so excited? Well, there was that part about killing the animal, right? And that seems weird to us in today's world. It seems weird, make an animal sacrifice, but Jesus was our sacrifice. Jesus is what enables us to be with God. And so, until that perfect time in history where God could send Jesus to us, the way that God told them to do it was to sacrifice an animal. And that is what would make it okay for them to be in the presence of God. And so David is worshiping because God has given him the way to be with the Ark of the Covenant, to be in God's presence. And he's so excited. He just lets it out. Just lets it out. He broke up with God, but God didn't break up with him. And that's where we're going to pause for halftime. Some of y'all are probably going to like this, I think. Will everybody stand? I can have some long sermons, right? So we're going to have halftime during the sermon. Okay, welcome to the halftime report. Thank you for the kids, for that wonderful parade, and what a great meet and greet. I just love a good meet and greet. You like a good meet and greet?
I love a good meet and greet.
Yeah, y'all do great at the meet and greet. That was fantastic. So Emily Palmer, how do you feel like Super Worship is going today?
I think it's going quite well. We've stuck to the game plan with no potty jokes. I'm looking forward to the end of the sermon, but I do hope we get through so I can make it to IHOP on time.
Gotta make it to IHOP on
Yes.
time. By the way, Emily Palmer, what do you call a group of 50 guys watching the game together? The Cowboys. Emily Palmer, I don't think I've ever told you that I'm actually from the future. I can predict the score of the Super Bowl game tonight before it even begins.
Oh wow, I can't wait to hear this.
It is going to be 0-0 before it begins. Get it? You know? Yes. Okay, well, the singing has been good. I hope y'all pick it up for the last song, especially the back right. Y'all need to kind of up the game there, but let's see what happens next.
Okay, we're gonna jump. That was a good halftime. It's like y'all have to let me know later whether you like that or not. It's like, yeah, you preach for an hour sometimes, Tim. We need a good stretch. All right, we'll jump right back into it. As the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. So everything that I described in the first half, Michal is looking out the window watching David with the common people in his ephod, worshiping and dancing, and Michal doesn't like it. So I have a couple questions. Question number one. There is two groups of people, I think, here. One is the group of people that are excited and are letting themselves go and are worshiping God. And there are another group of people who are mocking the way that others are worshiping. So my question is, which group would you be in? If you could go back to the days of 2 Samuel, and David was dancing like that, and there was this great celebration because of the presence of God coming into Jerusalem, would you be in the group who participated, or would you be in the group who mocked? Question number two. What does your worship tell other people? It says over and over again in the Psalms that David is aware that when he worships, other people are watching. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that you want to put on like a big act in worship. Nobody wants that, right? But we are supposed to, like David, to understand that there are other people watching us and wondering, do we really take this seriously? Maybe the problem in America is that the people in worship aren't really serious about worshiping God. If the people of the streets outside the church came into the church building and watched the worship of that particular church, what would they think? Would they think it's authentic? Would they think that the people worshiping are excited? Or would they think it's a checklist? Let's do these things so we can go to IHOP. Check them off. What if, and I do not mean to get into anybody's grill here. I'm not trying to get personal with anybody or anything like that. I'm just asking questions. What if the reason that some of our kids and our grandkids, what if some of them are not coming to church as grown-ups because worship never really seemed that important to us? It looked like we were just going through the motions. What if they watched us for 18 years, counting down the days that they would no longer have to do this and be fake? What does your worship tell the world? Now, does that mean that you have to be expressive in worship? No, don't take this the wrong way. Sitting in stunned silence at the power of the gospel is worship, okay? I mean, I've had some of the most powerful worship experiences sitting there with my mouth wide open, unable to move. It doesn't matter what you do. It's about where you are, and people can sense what it means to you. Let's go to the next verse here. And they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And when David had finished offering the burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, and distributed among all the people, the whole multitudes of Israel, both men and women, a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins to each one. Then all his people, each to his house. And there is a lot to unpack in that. I'm not even going to try, or we would still be sitting here like the story at the beginning, when the next service comes in. We're not going to do that. But the raisin cakes, I have to mention this. Did you know that raisin cakes are aphrodisiacs? They are. Guys, do with that what you will. I learned that this week too, so just whatever. But I think that explains why after these raisin cakes were given out, everybody went to their house. Just saying. What in the world is the author of 2 Samuel trying to tell us? Authentic, genuine worship is supposed to make you fruitful. Letting yourself go, whatever that looks like to you, being authentic, being genuine, being intimate with God is supposed to put you in a position to bear spiritual fruit. You are supposed to leave this place and produce fruit. And so the people went home, and what do? I'm obviously not going to get into the graphics of this, but when people get together, they're not thinking about the procedures and the order and how we're supposed to do these things, and we don't do this thing this way or this thing that way. No, they just get lost in the moment, and they produce fruit. It's a moment of love. It's a moment of intimacy. And I know that some of you are like, well, Tim, that's great. I get it biblically and everything, but I'm just not an expressive person. I'm just not that expressive. And okay, I'll believe that. In fact, I'll believe that if I can walk up to you and hand you a check for $1 billion, and you look at me and go, okay, thanks. What's next? If you can do that, I totally agree with you. But if the celebration of receiving that check is bigger than the celebration of God dying on a cross so you can be with Him for eternity. You can be with that perfect and holy God without being killed like Uzzah. You can safely be in the presence of God for eternity because Jesus died on a cross. And if that doesn't get you excited in worship, well then, okay. And so to end this, I just want to point this out because this is gonna be surprising to some people. And I just want you to think. Which sin was worse? Well, we all know the story that's coming up about Bathsheba and David. Is it Bathsheba's sin, which was adultery, leading to her husband's death? Or was it Michal's sin, not understanding the gospel, causing her to mock the worship of others, which is self-righteousness? Which one was worse? If you've grown up in certain types of churches, and I'm not going to mention the types, but certain brands of the Christian faith, you would 100% immediately say, Bathsheba's. That's adultery. I've heard 172 sermons on adultery. It's horrible. It's like the worst thing you can do. It's the greatest sin, right? Well, here's an interesting fact. Going back to the whole raisin cake thing, and I don't have time to get into all this, but after the author points that out to us, what happens to Michal? This is the last verse. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. But Bathsheba had a child named Solomon. And Solomon would bring forth Jesus. The woman who committed adultery went on to be fruitful and lead to the way that we can all be with God, whereas Michal, in her self-righteousness, bared no fruit. And that is not saying anything about childbirth. Please don't get offended by that. I know some ladies can't have a child, and that's not what the Bible is teaching right here at all. What the Bible is saying is that in a spiritual fruit kind of way, that's the example. That's the metaphor. Because Bathsheba got past her sin and moved on, Jesus came. Michal suffered with self-righteousness and never produced fruit. But what is the only thing that can keep someone from heaven? It's not adultery. It's not murder. It's not divorce. It's not lying. It's not stealing. What keeps you from heaven is your own self-righteousness. Because the only thing you have to do to go to heaven is to admit that it's not about you and you're only here because of Jesus. Humility. My God, you died for me. I could never be here without you. I accept that. And in the humility, you go to heaven.